When you're fed up with fighting food and your body, join us here. I'm Ali Shapiro, creator of the Truce with Food program and your host for Insatiable, where we explore the hidden aspects of fighting our food, our weight, and our bodies, and dive deep into nutrition science and true whole health. Fair warning, this is not your parents' health care. This is a big rebel yell to those who crave meaning, hunger for truth, and whose lust for life is truly insatiable. Believe me, freedom awaits. Welcome, everyone, to Season 6 of Insatiable. This season, our theme is radical healing and what's possible when we get to the root cause of what ails us. We heal when we're in choice, not when everything goes our way. So we're going to explore how to get to the root of our stories and what radical healing changes in our lives. Before we get started, I just want to let you know about my signature program, Truce with Food, and invite you to join us in January when registration begins. It's a personalized online coaching experience to create lasting food freedom and life freedom. Diets are a losing battle, so it's time to call a truce with food. The program only opens once a year, so don't miss out. You can join the waitlist at alishapiro.com/Truce with Food 2019. I still can't believe it's 2019. Okay, one of the great joys of my work as a rebel guide on the side is the front row seats to my clients' healthy rebellions. Helping clients discover they are their own best expert is such an honor and a tremendous inspiration. On today's episode, Radical Healing, Patterns, Awareness, and Discernment, I invite one of my clients on to share his personal story of radical healing. We'll discuss why he first came to me, what he discovered was the root of his snacking and overeating, and the results of his awareness of his accommodator pattern, plus some other surprises and challenges he encountered along the way. I hope his courage and truth will inspire you wherever you're at in your own journey. A little bit about Andrew, and I'm so excited, Andrew, that you're coming on because part of my practice is with men, but most people don't know that, so this is going to be fun.
Yes.
Andrew has an insatiable appetite for curiosity. Once he learned to direct that curiosity inward, the real changes began to explode, and at that point, without a black and white plan of counting calories, fat, cardio, carbs, etc., he found his consumption habits were fueled by deep inner triggers and started a journey that has Andrew more balanced in mind, body, and spirit than he has ever been, and ready for the relationships of today and the future. Andrew owns and runs a financial planning and investment management franchise with Ameriprise Financial, humbled to be the father of 3 amazing souls who are some of his greatest teachers. Honored and grateful to his wife for being the greatest teacher so far. Thank you for joining us, Andrew.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I have to tell you, so my, in my co-working space, my next door neighbor, Alan, who listens to the podcast, hi, Alan, I told him, I said, Alan, I'm going to interview a dude. And he's like, does he know what you say about the patriarchy? And I was like, yes. I was like, Alan, the patriarchy doesn't benefit men either. He was like, oh, we'll have to talk about that. So I think we'll talk. Yeah, we'll get to that a little bit today. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, most definitely.
So we've known each other now for a couple of years, and I would love for you to start at the beginning of when we actually were working together and started working together. What brought you to want to examine your relationship to food?
Great question. I think we're always, all of us in today's culture are examining our relationship to food in one way or another. But, you just keep, when you're insatiably curious, you don't want to, submit to the definition of insanity, right? Diets don't work. Keep doing this, keep getting the same results. What the heck can I do differently? And I think it was, I'm not sure, but it might have been a yoga healer podcast with Kate Stillman. I heard you on some podcast and you had mentioned, the whole truth of food and everything. It's like, it's not about the diet. It's not about everything. What's your relationship with yourself, with your food, and what's deep inside you that's keeping you stuck in this pattern. And I'm like, oh, I got to talk to her. So then I reached out.
Yeah. And what did you think? Well, I'm always curious, if you knew it wasn't about the food, were you surprised at what was at the root? And tell us what was at the root, because part of, we're using Angela Davis. She's an activist. Her definition of radical is getting to the root of things and ripping that out for the healing.
Yeah.
So what was at the root, and were you surprised about it? Because I always feel like people are going in with one thing and then tend to discover other things.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What's interesting is probably even maybe as early as a couple months ago, I probably answered that question differently. So what's great about the timing, the coincidental, divine, universal timing of us talking today is the biggest thing that was at the root of that problem was myself. And when I say myself, it was the programming language running this physical being known as myself, the underlying program that's always running, the things that we were taught as kids on what love means or what, consequences mean or what, how we value ourselves, how we criticize ourselves, how we critique ourselves, how we define compassion or empathy, or where we seek comfort, we get that from somewhere. So we get it from our parents, our surroundings, and we're so impressionable as children. And we carry that, right? We carry that language with us throughout life. So I think a lot of that programming and the underlying language was the root. So trying to grab a hold of that and untangle and rewrite that programming has been an adventure, and all started with you.
Remember we were joking the other day about I was saying how the 80s love songs were all preaching codependent relationships and none of us knew.
Yes.
And you were like, no more. You're like, I have to toss all my boys to men.
And
Do you remember?
Poisoning, Jodeci, I get sick listening to that crap anymore, man. It's like, but, you know, Keith Sweat, I mean, all of it, and all the stuff I used to go to be like, oh yeah. And now I listen to it, I'm just like, oh God, no wonder we've got this problem.
Yeah, well, and I love that you bring up and are so truthful about we get this programming in childhood, but then the culture, it's almost like surround sound reinforces it.
Yeah.
It's just so you end up in this hall of mirrors of basically your own created internal matrix of what it means to how to operate in this world. And can you kind of connect people to, you gave such a great answer. And I think for people who, wherever they are in their food journey, especially if they haven't started to look inward, because the culture distracts us with a different diet or a different plan. How was your own inner programming leading to your snacking and overeating and things?
Yeah, one of the biggest things, and I'll cut straight to one of the biggest aha moments I ever got. And it's just, you just gotta get curious and ask the questions, right? And we'll have to touch on alcohol because that was one of the biggest answers I got probably within the last couple of months. But a lot of your questioning and then just kind of digging and just, okay, well, what does this mean? And well, what time of day do you do this? And just getting curious, right? Let's look at the data. Let's ask all the questions. And long story short, we realized through that process that my desire for snacking, regardless of being hungry or anything else, or even the flavor or whatever, always came, mid to late afternoon before I was going home, right? Going home to my family, who's phenomenal, wonderful, amazing wife, at that time, and, beautiful, amazing children. How is it that I felt like I needed to, start, snacking and armoring up and energizing myself to go to my home environment? So that was huge.
Yeah, that is such a common, that transitional time, right? It's you're kind of coming from the day where you've worked really hard and then you want to be equally present for the evening. But it's also I love that you use the word armor up because it's almost well, what's going to happen, right? When you've got 3 kids, a wife, all this stuff, it's what am I coming home to? It's I have no idea. And that's I think a huge time for people to struggle with that, right? Of okay, I've had so many clients who are oh, just go to the cheese and crackers to help them, get through to dinner. So they thought, but it was really to help with to your point, getting the energy for the evening and to gear up and be who they want, who this idea of who they needed to be versus maybe who they were really feeling, both energy wise and mood wise, et cetera. Right. Cause you're a working person, work is challenge. You never know what life is going to throw to you, right? So it's you have the residue of the day and then also have to kind of show up in the evening. Another thing I was wondering if you could share how we explored, because I hear this from a lot of other clients and I think people will really relate is, do you remember saying I wish I almost was could just go on an island, right?
Yeah.
And have some time to myself where it was just me time. And we really realized that was kind of a metaphor of kind of not having a whole lot of boundaries of your space and time. And so can we talk about, we discovered of the 3 stress patterns, you have a high accommodating pattern. And once you were able to name this, how did you see it in your life? And how did transitioning to discernment rather than just yes, 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 to start to change your snacking and eating?
Yeah, I wish it was a process that was quick, and more
Uh-oh,
noticeable.
wah, wah, wah.
Yeah. But it was crazy as you brought that up. I totally just chills all over my body. So yeah, I remember that island because when you're what I've learned now, didn't know then, when you're totally overly accommodating for whatever reason, whether and I'll use the word enmeshment. When you're enmeshed with other people, when you attach yourself to other people and you make yourself responsible for their emotions and their well-being. That's exhausting, right? Because that's not our jobs. I'm not responsible for you. You're not responsible for me. And getting on the island was like, yes, there's nobody there on the island. You can't. And at the time, I didn't know that's why I was asking for that. And reflecting back, so shortly after that conversation, what's interesting, I'm pretty sure this is the right timing. So shortly after that conversation, I went on just a me trip to Hawaii and on the island, right? And that trip, I won't say it was wasteful, but what I did on that trip, I mean, I was lost. Here I am by myself on this amazing island that I've been to. We went to a 10-year anniversary. It was beautiful, amazing. I loved it. I love snorkeling, love the energy of the island. I still love it today. But when I was there, and I don't know if I've told anybody this, I didn't know what the hell to do. So I would go, I would make sure I would get up earlier before there would possibly be anybody else. And I'd maybe go for a walk because I'm supposed to go enjoy the scene and the smell of the ocean and the trees and the birds. And then maybe I'd go golf. Yeah, I like to golf. So we'll golf on the island. I'll do that. And besides those, I did go snorkeling a couple times. I love to snorkel. So I got out there and I did that a few times. But beyond those things that I knew I liked, I was lost. Let me just sit in the room and binge watch something on Netflix while I'm on a beautiful, amazing island in Hawaii. And that probably, I don't know exactly how much of that I did, but I did way more than I was out there enjoying the island and my time and doing some like self-discovery of asking myself questions of, because I didn't know how, we're not taught that.
Not at all. I mean, if anything, and this is the nuance and the trickery and the Jedi-ness required, is you've been rewarded for accommodating, right? It's why you're successful in so many areas of your life. It's like, oh, this works really well. And then, oh, but there's a, probably the terminology you would use, like a light and a shadow side of that, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Cause it works till it doesn't, and I definitely believe our spouses and our children are our closest, our biggest teachers. They're the ones that, Carolyn Mize talks about, these soul contracts, these sacred contracts. They're the ones we contract with to shine a light and reflect, give us an opportunity to look at those shadows. So here I am, a successful husband who provides this great material abundance for our family, a successful husband and father, yet, the pressure builds for, what do you want? Why do I have to make decisions all the time? The stuff I'd hear from my wife or, things like that. It's like, you just don't seem like you're present. What do you want to do? How can, why's it got to be what I want to do? I'm like, I don't care. We can do whatever you want. Why is that a bad thing? Right. We'll accommodate you. It's all about you. And that's not healthy. Nobody, I think it's not healthy at an unconscious level because, I think a healthy relationship is two strong, sovereign individuals who want to mutually be in the same space and share their similarities, as well as have space and comfort and safety to embrace their differences and understand them. And that's where relationships grow. That's where intimacy is. That's where love is.
I love that you say that because I remember when we were working together, even with one of your sons, I think it was, I won't say his name because, privacy, or you can if you want, I don't, but you were really working on not reacting to his own growth at the time. Do you remember that? And I think a lot of times with parents, like sometimes in adult relationships, it's easier. I mean, it depends, to your point, on the intimacy of the relationship and the relation. Whenever we're in Truth with Food, it's like, we're going to work on the $70 cake where your story's active. And I always tell people, don't go to your close family because they're the people who, that's the hardest. That's the $700. Once you master the 70, then you can work on those close, like partnership relationships or, parental relationships. But those are the hardest because those people like have your heart on a platter, right? Like you're beating bruised heart on a platter and they know like,
right.
But
they've got the remote control to all the buttons, They know exactly what buttons to push, what channel to play.
Yeah. Oh, go this, and then you like that for a nightcap, you know. But I think sometimes with parents, and again, parenting is so hard these days because there's just not a lot of social support, and everyone has this idea of that there's a best way. Just like diets, there isn't. But I remember you really working on like not reacting to your son's own growth and letting him work through that. And I think that's really important because if we're in an accommodator pattern, especially like I imagine as a child, and I'm not comparing kids to a dog, but like Carlos and I realized we've totally spoiled our dog, right? Like I never want him to be uncomfortable. It's like,
Right. Right.
and as parents, I imagine you don't want your kids to be uncomfortable, but you were able to really start to like, whoa, by me letting him, emote, like as kids have all meltdowns and that kind of stuff, they're learning their own emotional capacity at the time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Again, it took a couple of years of starting to get curious of like, wow, what is this at? That today, a couple of years later, I feel that's real healthy. I feel, we're there like, and I still notice some of the old, accommodating stuff that comes up like, oh, buddy, this is going to be hard. And I'm like, you know what? Especially when the two boys, when they're going at it, I'm like, you know what? They need to figure this out. And like I said, Tara was, my wife was a great teacher on all that because she, a lot of times she would get, I think she would get put off by the accommodating things and get upset, like, why are you doing this? Just let it be, or let them, experience some tough love or something, and things like that. And I feel healthy at that place now.
Right. Well, what I love too is, and I want to talk more about how you define discernment and how that really helped break you out of that accommodator pattern. But when you were talking about the island and also like tough love or accommodating, I think you really found, and it's a flexible middle, but that kind of releasing that all or nothing thinking, right? From like accommodating and rescuing to like, shutting off your emotion or being on an island or being immersed with people. There's actually this great middle ground. And for you, discernment, that concept that we talked a lot about, help. Can you explain what that means to you and how it started to help you find collaboration rather than accommodation with people and the situations in your life?
Yeah. It all started with me looking up the definition of it because I'm like, okay, well, what does this even mean? And then, I started practicing the curious question is, okay, what's mine and what's not mine, right? How do you discern between, what's mine or not mine? How do you discern between, a carb or a protein? What's the difference? There's things that makes everybody different. So there's this total differentiation of that. And when you start talking about, things that aren't, you can see a cake as a carb and you can see a piece of steak as protein. You can't see your emotions and feelings of like, is this my sadness or is this your sadness? Is this my guilt or your guilt? Is this my shame or your shame? And, and you just start asking a question. So what's mine or not mine? What's not mine? And I reflect on the situation. Dang, why did I get baited into that argument again? Well, what was mine or not mine in this? And, and you just keep being questioned. And to the point where today I really feel comfortable with the fact that anybody, could come to me and just be upset, emotional, sad, mad, and share their stuff. And I wouldn't feel responsible to make them feel better. I'd have space for whatever it is you want to bring to the table and let you own it and just put it out there. And let's look at what's yours together if you want. But I'm not going to attach myself to it. I'm not going to project my crap onto it. That's yours. Let's honor your stuff. And, here's a little project for you. I kind of stumbled on this. Anyone listening, try this. Go to Facebook. If everybody still uses Facebook or whatever social media, whatever social media that people can respond to you, go to it and just put on there, I'm really, really sad, and see what happens. 90% or more of the responses are going to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. There's going to be a ton of advice about how to look for the greater things in life and how to hurry up and get your happiness. There isn't a acknowledgement of like, you're sad. Where's the compassion and empathy for that sadness? How do we process that sadness? No, let's hurry up and bury it and ignore it and hide it and pour a bunch of food, sugar, and alcohol on top of it so we don't have to feel it.
Well, that was just such a clear answer. and example. No, because there's two things. Oh God, I want to circle back to so much. First of all, right there, I think what you were talking about too is, a lot of people think if they stop accommodating, they're going to stop helping people. And what you are actually describing is you're creating this sacred space. First of all, people don't take advice with stubborn problems, right? Like
No.
They already know what they should do, but they're not doing it. And so you are now creating a sacred space where they need a witness. And I bet you're actually being more effective than if you tried to take it on and fix them, because no one wants our advice when they're struggling. Like, they have to come to the answers themselves. That's part of reclaiming our power, being like, wait, I can figure this out.
Well, and depending on what programming, is running underlying for them, all that advice is either telling them they're not enough, telling them they're even more worthless than they feel because they can't reach happiness because they feel sad. It's judging them for it, or it's telling them, it's minimizing their own presence and their own place, in this moment, and their right to be here on this planet, because you're not witnessing it. And it's their responsibility. It's their own language. It's not your fault because you want me happy. You want me to be happy and stop being sad. But their underlying language is leading to a whole bunch of other dark shadow stuff. And then when you create space for it, then you create an opportunity, that sacred moment. You create this opportunity that your soul is begging for. You say, hey, here's an opportunity to shine just a little bit of light on this darkness. And that might lead you to the root of what's behind it. It's not that a client died. It's not that a family member died. It's not that a girlfriend, boyfriend broke up with you. It's the underlying stories and thoughts and everything around that's connected to that root programming that's, making you believe whatever it is you're believing about yourself. And if you don't give people the light and give yourself the light to actually just stop and look at it and maybe shine a light and see what you see, then, it's going to keep growing back because you can't get to the root of it.
Oh, I love that point you made. And it, not only does it grow back, but it becomes like resistant, like antibiotics, right? Antibiotic resistant. If you keep overusing the tools that don't necessarily work. And as you were saying that, I thought of this quote, and I'm just going to read it out because I think you'll like it too. But it's an excerpt from Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, and it's on service. And she gave this at the Noetics Science Review, but she said, I think I would go so far as to say that fixing and helping may often be the work of the ego, and service the work of the soul. They may look similar if you're watching from the outside, but the inner experience is different. The outcome is often different too. Our service serves us as well as others. That which uses us strengthens us. Over time, fixing and helping are draining, depleting. Over time, we burn out. Service is renewing. When we serve, our work itself will sustain us. Service rests on the basic premise that the nature of life is sacred, meaning other people too, that life is a holy mystery which has an unknown purpose. When we serve, we know that we belong to life and to that purpose. Fundamentally, helping, fixing, and service are ways of seeing life. When you help, you see life as weak. When you fix, you see life as broken. When you serve, you see life as whole. From the perspective of service, we are all connected. All suffering is like my suffering, and all joy is like my joy. The impulse to serve emerges naturally, inevitably, from this way of seeing. So as you were speaking, I thought of that.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for sharing. I was just sitting there soaking in all of that. The whole body's just vibrating. Like, yeah, that's so beautiful and amazing.
Yeah. That concept of service, I think it helps those of us who like to people please and accommodate, think, wait, am I being in service here? And just have to.
And Ali, what's your definition of service? Because your definition of service will be totally different than somebody else's definition of service.
Yeah. Well, I think I've got to figure it out, but I think embodying more of what that poem says of, and I do it with my clients. I mean, you guys, I obviously can hold, as I've healed myself, I can hold a much greater range of emotion for other people when they're struggling.
Right. Absolutely. So that service is just like that poem, right? It's just like it. You could show up and hold space, a great range of emotion, whether it be extreme joy or extreme pain. You can hold space for their emotion, not project your own. So versus maybe somebody who is overly accommodating or enmeshed, their definition of service is like, well, I see your pain and it's projecting my own and I just want to make it go away. So let me go be of service and tap into my ego and fix this, right? And that's the masculine side, the ego side. We want to fix everything, and men can't fix things. Women just want the feminine side. They just want to be heard, have the space. And so taking it even deeper than just men and women, that's the energy of all of us, and the ego's not bad. The ego's not wrong. It's there for a reason and a purpose. And it is tied to more of a masculine energy. And service is not the best great way to do everything. Everything's balanced. Service counterbalances the ego and creates some openness, some grounding, some space. And that's a very feminine energy. And you need both of those to have, a very good balanced aspect of just being able to do what you do for a client. to be able to do what I do for a financial client. But yours is so much harder because I think you hit it, or more challenging in the sense that you get to deal with emotion. Now, I do get into some emotional stuff with clients, but
I was going to say money is like loaded emotionally.
yeah, exactly. When you start having conversations about purpose and goals and how important this is to them, it's not about projections and numbers and calculations. You hit a lot of people's walls.
Well, I was thinking like money is about like, what do I want to matter? What matters to me? What my time spent? You're such a clear thinker. I swear all the ladies listening are going to be like, there's men who are capable of thinking like this. See? This is, and not to bash men, but this is like why when we hold men to high standards, look what happens, right? Got Andrew. A word that you used a lot and is so big for, especially if people are stuck in that accommodator pattern or when is projection. And given you've been able to talk about that, so talk about the other thing so clearly. Can you, I've talked about it on the podcast before, but I think explaining to people, especially as accommodators, to your point, what you were saying earlier about how do I know what sadness is my sadness or someone else's? Or often if we feel like we can't fix something, we feel helpless. And then we project that helplessness onto the person, which then creates more fixing. So can you explain what projection is?
Yeah.
How you understand it?
Yeah. So, projection, in its simplest form, you're projecting. You think of your projector, your old school projector. A light is shining something from a source. So you're that source, and your light is going to project something onto somebody, and it's going to reflect it back to you. Because the only way, you think of it just from a mechanical standpoint, that light projector that you used to see in school reflects an image onto a wall, and that image is reflected back at you so you can see it. And so when we project that stuff on people, we project our sadness, our judgments, our guilt, or anything else. That's coming from us. That is coming from us, and it's hitting this target, this wall, this person, this child, and it's reflecting back to us what we don't know about. It's your soul's invitation. That light from the inside is your soul's invitation to say, hey, here's something that's unsettling for you. Here's an invitation to get curious and take a deeper look of what is inside you that's being projected onto this person. So, we'll go to the discomfort of, my youngest son, Rowan. So in his outbursts and everything like that, the disruption of that peace, was an invitation. I was projecting that. I was, oh my God, he must be, so upset. He must be this. How am I going to fix this? Right. And the whole time early on, it's an invitation. What about me is so activated and uncomfortable, just noticing that, oh, that hits my gut versus like, Ali, if you said, if you had an outburst about it, my gut wouldn't tighten up. I wouldn't all of a sudden try to figure out how to fix it up. And this is just me because mine is more tied to the familial aspect. So you, just a friend, be like, whoa, Ali, yeah, you're mad, you're this. I'm going to hold space. I'm going to reflect back to you. I'm going to acknowledge you. I'm going to show compassion. I'm going to show empathy, and I'm going to show affirmation. And, I'm going to hit all those things to let you get out into this space, everything that's inside you. And maybe you're projecting on me. It doesn't matter. I'm not absorbing it because I've discerned what's yours and what's not mine, and what's yours and what's mine. And that projection is just an invitation. So, and the way to understand that it's a projection that's activating you, just pay attention to your body. Pay attention to, those lower chakras. Is your gut tight? Is your throat? Do you feel like you're being suffocated and you just want to scream at somebody? Are you angry? Then they're not angering you. Those immigrants marching to the border aren't a threat to everyone here. They're reflecting back your own inner fear. What are you afraid of? What are you afraid of?
Yeah, I love it. Bringing the political,
Yeah. Well, I had a very lovely, entertaining discussion with an old friend last night about it. And, these, tens of thousands of, immigrants marching toward the border. And I'm like, they're a threat. What if they showed up at your front door and blah, blah, blah. And then, and I said, you know what? Let's look at data and ask, so these people that are encroaching upon a border that's several states away from you are a threat to you, and you're afraid of what that means to our country and our rights and everything else. Forget about the fact that we did that to Indians, but just take a minute and look at data and perspective. Let's broaden your scope a little bit. How many criminals live within a 50-mile radius of you that are U.S. citizens that are a bigger threat to you and your home than those immigrants that are tens of thousands of whatever, miles and feet and states away from you and your comfort, your home? There's way more criminals, quote unquote criminals, that could do harm or want to do harm around you in your hometown. Where's the energy and compassion about building a wall around them?
I know. Well, and it's funny too, because I saw this meme on social media. It's like, oh, the American myth is when it was white people coming here, it was for prosperity and a better life. But then when it's refugees, who are, by the way, listeners, most of what the Central American refugees and asylum seekers are, our government destabilized that region. It had a hand in destabilizing that region. So, I just want to, that's like part of the thing that angers me the most is like our government has contributed to this. And now we're saying, nope, not part of me, but I get your point. And I think going back to your example with Rowan and his outbursts in peace, like your goal was like, oh, I'm succeeding if there's peace. And then when there wasn't peace, even though that wasn't necessarily the goal of what Rowan needed in the moment, right? And then it was like the anger, then you put the anger on that person, where in this case, Rowan, or even though it's your own frustration of like, why can't I keep the peace? Why can't I keep the peace? And that happens so much when we're not clear on what's ours and our own goals and what's the emotional responsibility and goals of the other person. And when it's one data point in time over the course of an entire relationship. That's why sometimes I see like that's really popular in the self-help industry right now is like what you think about me or like what you say to me or think about me is none of my business. And I understand the spirit of that. However, sometimes we're creating actions because of our projections that are actually, they're our own triggers, but they are our responsibility, right? Yeah. And so
right.
That's important to know. And that's why I love that you shared that question that's been so helpful for you is like, what's mine and what's theirs? Because sometimes we do things as accommodators or avoiders or competitors that it's our own stuff, seeking out to other people and we are responsible for that. So,
right. Well, give you a great example. One great example recently, and I'll give Rowan's mom, Tara, I'll give her all the credit for this because it was her idea. He was getting, his anxiety was kicking up. He was going to miss something at the ballet studio. And it was 2 hours from now. But, he was just freaking out. He's getting activated. He's getting angry and just frustrated. And, and I kind of sent a quick text to Tara. She's like, well, just let him be angry. It's something she was at a women's conference up in New York recently. And that was one thing she learned. Just let him be angry. So years ago, when I tried to, bring peace to his anger, get him to calm down, it just made it worse, right? But that's what I needed. I needed him to calm down. He just needed to be angry. So fast forward to like this past week, he's getting angry. He's getting all frustrated. Instead of trying to tell him and prove to him, dude, you got 2 hours. Why are you blowing up? It's like, dude, let's get angry. Let's go beat up. And we're in my bedroom. Let's beat up on his bed. And I start punching it. And I'm like, come on, let's go. Let's get mad at it. Let's grunt. Let's groan. Let's give it to people's elbow. And he's looking at me. He jumps right in. He starts beating the crap out of the pillows and the bed. And he's yelling. What? Yelling's okay? All right, cool. Be angry. And then by the end of it, he's smiling. He's kind of laughing a little bit. He's laying there exhausted because that takes a lot of work, right? You just got to beat on a punching bag or anything for like 30 seconds and see how long you last. And he's just like, there. And I was like, you good? He's like, yeah. I was like, you still need to hit it some more? He goes, no. He goes, all right. He goes, well, what time do we need to leave? Oh, we'll leave here at this time. Okay. I'm going to go read. All right, go read, buddy.
That is so beautiful.
That's the example. It's like, all right, now he knows he can be angry. It's safe. It's okay. I'm not going to judge him or criticize him or be uncomfortable with it. And I know that, I've got to still work on my self-critic that's beating me up and criticizing me for all the times that, I fought against that. I projected onto it, right?
Well, but that's the cool thing is life is very forgiving and resilient, right? It's like kids are more resilient. We are more resilient. So it's like, oh, well, you're there now, especially as he, becomes a teenager and that, because I'm sure that's a crazy, crazy time of rebellion and all that stuff. But I love that example because, in our work, it's all ideally you get to that collaborative win-win space. And it's like, oh my God, you didn't have to accommodate. You were able to connect with him, right? On this like deep level and also be you're leading him by example of like how to be emotionally intelligent and aware and build capacity for those feelings so that they don't come out on other people, in 20, 30 years, which I think is just so beautiful. Like, I love that. Especially because he felt in it, he felt you were in it with him, right? Like what a better gift than someone witnessing or being in it with you, not trying to fix it, but letting you go through your own process.
Right.
So what are some of the surprises? Tell people about how your food is now. That's like always to me, I know people, I think it's like the least interesting part, but it's important, right? Because that is what I mean, it is great because when you eat more in alignment for your goals, you do have more physical resilience and all that stuff. So it is it's an important piece. I don't want to dismiss it, but
Yeah. Yeah. No, it is very important, and it all started with, do something, it all started with the doctors, as a young, early 30s young man, trying to push Lipitor on me for cholesterol issues, because, I played football through college, so I'm burning off whatever it is I'm eating, and I can eat and consume whatever because the amount of, exertion is keeping me fairly fit, but then you graduate and you go get a real job and you sit at a desk and, I leave college 230 pounds, probably about 10% body fat. And within a year, I'm 285. And I'm like, what are these red lines on my belly? Why do my clothes keep shrinking? Total lack of awareness. You're like, holy crap, those are stretch marks. So you're just constantly figuring out, and we just go off the data, and now we're finding, I hope it's okay to mention a person, but like Dave Asprey, I love his curiosity around hacking and actual true data, because he's the one that brought a lot of things to light for me on, the myths of calories in, calories out, the myths of low fat, high fat, and, the importance of good fat and the importance of good quality foods and not just processed junk. And, I just love how I think he does whatever he does for himself, but for me, he goes way overboard on the data for myself.
Control.
Yeah. So I went.
You need some more discernment, right? No.
Yeah. My answer was to go vegetarian. This is how I'm going to start my diet. I'm going to go vegetarian, and this is a guy who had, steak, potatoes, and my vegetable might be a salad. And I'm going to try to go to a diet where all I eat is vegetables and no meat. And I don't know what beyond those things, what other vegetables are there to eat out there? Let's go explore. But yeah, to today where I need to go buy new clothes, new pants. I keep dropping weight. I don't know exactly what I weigh. I don't really get on a scale anymore. And I just eat in a way that feels right and serving. And when I don't eat that way, I pay attention and notice. I don't blame myself. It's like, eating that, the 3 or 4 slices of pizza later than usual, last Saturday night was painful all night long in my gut. And the next day I felt bloated and inflamed, and I knew why, and I just made sure to try to keep more of a lighter intake of food the next day. And, really I didn't need to eat breakfast because pizza was still sitting in there. So you just don't eat. What? You don't eat 4, 5, 6, 7 meals? It's some people need to, some people don't. It's all about your body type, and we're also different. You just got to find out who you are, what's at the root of you, and then feed it what it needs.
Yeah. No, I love that. But I just love that it's so much more ease filled because, I laughed when you were like, I wish it were faster. And I totally wish there was a way to expedite it. However, when you look at the cumulative effect, I mean, now you feel really healthy. You're, improving the relationships in your life and you don't have to be on an island. So it's like and I would love if you could share something that's happened recently about alcohol. I think it illustrates the deeper we go and the more we come into our own and self-expression, like these other habits just continue to fall away. So can you talk a little bit about the alcohol turn of events that's happened without even trying, people? I mean, you've been working on yourself and the side effect is the alcohol.
Man, I've been trying with alcohol for a long time, and just being curious, like, well, what is it? What do I get from it? What do I, what's the purpose? What do I do here? And definitely I don't believe I was or am an alcoholic by no means, but I was definitely regularly consuming alcohol. And, I would test that there. I would go times like, all right, well, I'm not going to drink for a couple of weeks just to prove that I don't, quote unquote, need it.
I remember us when we were working together, you did that, and your sleep, you were monitoring your sleep, and it was so much better. So you knew the benefit.
Yeah. James Swanwick, he has this 30-day no alcohol challenge, and it's like clockwork, like everybody, so the first few nights it's harder to go to sleep because, you're not numbing yourself to think you're going to go to sleep. And then like day 8 or 9, I had one of those little sleep monitor things, with I don't know if it's a Garmin watch now, or maybe you can do it with your Apple Watch or anything, but it monitors kind of how well you sleep, how much you're moving around in your sleep. And I had all kinds of data like, dang, I move a lot when I sleep. And leading up to even doing this challenge. And after about day 8 or 9, after that first week, I thought my watch was broken because I go look at the data and it's flatline. No way, so, the next day I look at it, well, it counted all my activity through the day. It got my movement. We'll just see how it goes. Well, long story short, you get to the end of the 30 days and every single night, there it is, flatline. And it was cool. And it was amazing. And it was like, wow, these are wonderful, healthy benefits. And it was so wonderful. Here's all the data that shows it's so good that after 30 days, I go back into a drinking habit. That's so good. Let's not do it. So, and I'd say recently, probably within the past 2 months is where the big change came. And I came to a time in my life, and I'll spare a ton of details. I think, my wife and I are at a crossroads of really figuring out who we are individually and questioning whether or not that means we stay together. So it's very challenging and hard to go through. And so about 6-8 weeks ago, when we came to the decision to start exploring and getting curious what it is like to be apart, I mean, it was so, I don't want to say soul shattering. It was so heart wrenching, soul wrenching that like, oh my gosh, here's the woman I've loved and admired and supported and has brought these amazing, wonderful, beautiful children into my life, who's been an amazing, healthy, mother figure to my daughter all of her life. And wow, what does this mean for me? It's, you start questioning, well, who are you without your spouse? And, who are your kids and all the fears and all of a sudden here comes those, here's an exposure, here's an opportunity. I've got this. I know this, I've done the work. I have these these skills and these tools in my tool belt. And I know this is all reflecting some deeper root that I haven't found yet. And it has. And the past 6 weeks, it's just the exploration and the transformation has been real. But to the alcohol, before I get too far away from that was one of those things that I loved us, our family, and her so much that what I know for a fact, beyond without a doubt, I don't care if it's 1, 2, 4 drinks, alcohol numbs your senses, right? These athletes don't drink a beer and then go perform well because, it's going to numb stuff. It's going to nullify things. And I wanted to be clear. I found a goal or purpose to be clear. This next stage or phase is going to require clarity. It's going to require all of me to really find this really deep root that is so activated in me and to honor, my wife and I and on where our process is and the decision that we may or may not make. I need to be clear. And just like that, connecting with that purpose, connecting with that goal, you do what you're trained to start, okay, well, what's the black and white. So am I just going to not drink for 30 days? Am I just going to only drink on days that end in Y? Am I just going to have 2 a day, most days? So you start going through that. And I'm like, well, no. I just paused, came back to the purpose and goal. I want to be clear. And at every moment that I think I'm going to have a drink from a habitual standpoint, I'm going to ask, is it okay not to be clear? And so far since that point, it's not okay. I want to be clear in all of this. And the very next night I had a client wine dinner. The chefs at this restaurant do an amazing job of creating stuff that aren't on the menu, and they pair a wine with the meal. And I'm like, okay, how many am I going to drink? How many am I going to drink? What am I going to do? What are people going to say about me? What are they going to ask me? Like, oh, what's wrong with him? Why is he not drinking? Pause. Let's take a moment. Let's let's bring it to this moment, right? Let's bring it back to the moment. Fear can't exist in the moment. It only exists in the stories of the past and the future. So I was like, I'm just going to take it a step at a time. I want to stay connected with my goal and my purpose. And I got through the whole night. And what I told myself was I'll take a sip of the wine that they pair with it. And that's it. So by the end of the night, nowhere near even a full glass of wine, a lot of water and a lot of grapefruit. I felt great and wonderful. And I felt clear. I felt I was integrity with my purpose. And I didn't feel like I was criticizing myself. Like, oh, you technically drank though. It's not like you're not drinking. I'm like, it's not about drinking. It's about being clear.
First of all, I love that story. And I love that, it's right. You have to connect to a goal and a purpose. However, I would say that the fact that you value clarity, especially at this time when you're at a threshold, that speaks to the work that you've been doing, right? Because I don't think most people, their goal is, it's like to be all or nothing or to whatever. And to have that goal and for you to value and prioritize clarity versus accommodating what the social activity was, right?
Yeah.
I just think that speaks to how much of yourself you've reclaimed in our work, but also the work you've done since, and that the curiosity you continue to ask is a real testament to how much capacity you have to hold so much, so much complexity, and want to be clear for this. Because I think the default, especially in America, is numb out. To your point, put a bunch of sugar and alcohol and Netflix on top of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can have an understanding of the data of what the sugar, the alcohol, and the food does to you, chemistry wise, and why it does this and why it's bad for you. We can understand that.
And why your sleep is so good.
And But until you relate to it, and like, so your goal is to lose weight. Okay, great. That's a wonderful goal. You got to start somewhere. Until the biggest takeaway from all of this, you create a goal or purpose connected to something at the root of you, at the core of your being, that's real and authentic and yours. That's yours. That's not somebody else's. Nobody can take that from you. That's yours. Let somebody challenge me on my goal of clarity. That's mine. You can challenge me all you want. I'll hear you. I'll appreciate your difference of opinion. But this is my goal. That's mine. It's not to, get better sleep. It's not to reduce alcohol because some people would judge me as an alcoholic. It's not to, lose weight. It all started that way. But the curiosity of getting deeper and deeper and deeper is like, okay, well, what's really true? What about losing weight is important to you? And then when you answer that question, well, how does that feel? Who are you when you start eating this way? And, you just keep asking the question until you get to the point where I don't have any more questions. I don't want to be clear. Why don't I want to be clear? I can clearly state it.
Yeah, no, you're right. But I mean, what you're describing is, and I think this is especially, you use the word enmeshment. And I think this, all of us, we get confused with what society's goals are for us versus our own goals for ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are told that weight loss will give us ease and meaning and recognition and belonging, right? There's all this like unspoken subtext. And we may need all of that. However, it's like life isn't so shallow that we're going to get that from weight loss only, right? And if anything,
Right.
it doesn't feel intimate, right? Because it's not intrinsically connected to our own truth. And the more we can really get clear on what we really value at our core. Like, I think sometimes people think, and granted, maybe people have tons of values, but like if we can really get back down to what we value. And I think you really value growth and transformation. And so clarity is so important to you. And you walk the talk. You don't just say, post. Actually, I don't think you ever post inspirational quotes, which I like, but you live it. And I think that's so inspiring. And I wanted people to hear your story and how you're it doesn't mean everything's tied up in a bow. It means you're continuing to be in your truth and getting to the root of things with your curiosity, which is just, what a way to live, right? It doesn't mean it's always easy, but you can live with yourself at the end of the day. So before we go, what's your current edge? You shared a little bit in your personal life, but is there anything you want to add about like what's your current edge? Because, I wrote this in a post about how wildly creative people tend to struggle with food because if they don't have a creative edge, right? And by creativity, I don't mean, it can be scrapbooking or writing, but I also mean, and we were talking about this before the show, this idea that nature is always growing into more beautiful levels of complexity. And we are too when we're healthy. We've got that, to use Chinese medicine, our qi flowing, right? Always a new creative tension. And so what is yours?
Yeah, it's still discovering. I just tapped into it probably recently, I believe. So my current edge, and before I go there, I want to say, the biggest edge I've had, and it's going to lead to the one of that is being able to, there's an old saying that basically says it's not about, the best teachers out there go find out great students. It's the student, when the student's ready, the teacher will show up. You'll find the teacher. So when the student's ready, the teachers will come. When I was ready, you came. You were a phenomenal teacher. Thank you. I love what you're doing, and I totally appreciate all that you're bringing to this world and humanity and the energy and the chi and everything that's going. So
thank you.
You do wonderful stuff, and then all the other wonderful teachers since then. It's like, every time I came up to a point where I didn't feel like I was growing, or I just felt stagnant, or because I was paying attention, like, I don't like this feeling or this place. What I've learned to do recently, I heard this from Wayne Dyer years ago. He said, sometimes you just got to let go and let God. And I was reading in a book, I think it's called Spiritual Divorce recently, and it hit hard. She was saying, you got to stop being the general manager of the universe. Who am I to pretend I can control and influence how nature is going to grow, where it's going to grow, what it's going to do in an environment when I plant something there? That's a knowing I don't have. Why am I trying to general manage anything? So how do I let go to some higher energy, power to us, whether it's God, whether it's Allah, whether it's just universe, whether it's chi, whether it's nature? How do I tap into that? Because that's going to let me know whenever I can't grow here. This tree is not going to drop seeds where it can't grow. It's not going to grow. How many times you walk past a tree and it grows to where the sunlight is? It didn't go straight up and down, right? It's not black and white. It's going to grow toward the light, toward the nourishment, toward this higher power that's drawing it and going to fuel it and energize it. And And so whenever I come to a place where I don't feel like I'm growing, I just stop and, check in, meditate, and go within and try to be in this moment and try to find my higher power connection and just ask for a sign, really. Hey, what should I do next? What's our next step here?
I love that, because what you're describing is surrender, and that's something that I've totally been trying. And it's when I first came upon the term surrender, I thought it was this like passive, like, oh, you just like let go, right? It's like, no, it's freaking hard, right? Because you're like ego and other things are like, no, but that might be better. That and waiting, right? Oh my God, in the land of productivity, to just say, give me a sign. I mean, that's freaking rebellious. You know what I mean? To wait and not react is like, oh my God, it's so challenging. Oh
yeah. And maybe one day there might be a perspective where you'll be able to see waiting as the ultimate rebellion, right?
yeah. 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 No, I love that. I love that. So this was I love chatting with you, because you can go in so many different directions and to so many depths, which is so refreshing. Is there anything that you want to share that I didn't ask?
I don't think so. My biggest advice until you find, a connection to a higher power is just embrace your curiosity. Find anything and everything to be curious about. And when you start being curious about things outside of yourself, that's a great sign that you're looking in the wrong place. What is it within you that you can get curious about?
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for being here, Andrew. And thank you everyone for listening. I also just wanted to mention a hat tip to Jack McNeil, who made that Dr. Naomi Remen quote. She brought that up on Instagram, and it enabled me to pull it up and read it. And I'll include that quote in the show notes for Andrew's show. So thank you so much for being here, Andrew.
Very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Health Rebels, for tuning in today. Have a reaction, question, or want the transcript from today's episode? Find me at alishapiro.com. I'd love if you leave a review on Apple Podcast and tell your friends and family about Insatiable. It helps us grow our community and share a new way of approaching health in our bodies. Thanks for engaging in a different kind of conversation. And remember, always, your body truths are unique, profound, real, and liberating.